We had one case. There was a soldier went bananas. He was on drugs or something. And he pulled out his M16 and was holding it on 5 or 6 other soldiers. The first sergeant came in, saw what was going on, and immediately shot him without any hesitation because this guy's finger was on the trigger. Well, the division artillery commander wanted to court-martial him for homicide on the theory that let's try by court-martial and let's have the court-martial acquit him. And I said, no way. My name is Ron Holdaway, and I grew up in Star Valley in Wyoming, in Afton, where my father was the principal of the high school. I went to Star Valley High School and then to the University of Wyoming, and where I got a Bachelor of Arts degree in history. And then I went to law school at the University of Wyoming.
Did you grow up wanting to be a lawyer?
Yes. I decided on that, when I was a senior in high school.
In high school.
I remember Bob Dole said he became a lawyer because it was indoor work with no heavy lifting. So that's why I became a lawyer.
And you said your father was military.
No.
He was not military.
He was drafted in World War I. He developed the Spanish flu, and by the time he recovered up at Fort Douglas, the war was over.
Wow.
So he served about 60 days, I guess.
Now, you ended up in the military. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, yes. At the University of Wyoming, it was a land-grant college, so I had to take 2 years of ROTC. All males had to at that time.
And what year would this be?
1953.
Okay.
And I knew I was going to have to serve sometime in the military. People of men of my age had a military obligation. So I knew that I'd have to serve sometime. And then I decided to go through the 4 years of ROTC and was commissioned in the infantry. But I was deferred from active duty because by that time I had had a year of law school, and the Judge Advocate General's Corps was having trouble getting people to sign up. So I got deferred to finish law school on my promise to have my commission transferred to the Judge Advocate General's Corps.
And what is that? Explain that to people.
Well, it's a group of about 2,000 officers who are the lawyers for the Army.
So there's only about 2,000 of those lawyers, huh? In the military?
About 2,000 scattered in different locations.
Yeah. Was the Korean War going on at the time?
No. When I was first in college, the Korean War was just winding up.
Okay.
We had no we had a heavy obligation of forces in Europe, Germany mainly,
Yeah.
and Japan and Korea. But you knew you were going to get drafted if you didn't make some other arrangement.
Okay.
And at least in the group I grew up with, everybody felt an obligation to serve. I was 7 years old at Pearl Harbor. I was 11, and so when World War II ended, and people of my age group were kind of military oriented. We had experienced what went on in World War II, and and we knew we were going to have to serve. And nobody had any complaints about that. I certainly didn't.
Did the ROTC, did they help fund going to law school since you had kind of committed to doing that, or no?
No. I did get $27 a month when I was in the last 2 years of ROTC.
At that point, did you think you'd be a lawyer in the military?
No, I was hoping when I did my military that I would be, but I had no objective at that time of making it a career.
So they let you finish law school?
Oh, yes.
And then what happened after that?
Well, after that, when I passed the bar test, I was eligible to become a JAG. My commission was transferred to the infantry, and guess what? My first assignment was to go to the infantry school as a student.
Where was that at?
Fort Benning, Georgia. So I did, I guess, excuse me, my voice isn't working well today. I did 13 weeks as a student in the infantry and became eligible to become a platoon leader in the infantry.
What was Fort Benning like for you? What did they do there?
Oh, I enjoyed it. It was nice. I had been to the ROTC summer camp. It was much like that, except I think better operated.
Were they yelling and screaming at you like you see in the movies?
Well, not quite. we were all lieutenants at that time, but I kind of enjoyed being out and running around and playing like a soldier.
And where did you go from there?
I went to the Judge Advocate General School in Charlottesville, Virginia, their basic class. And I guess that was another 13 weeks. And then...
did you enjoy that?
Yeah, it was interesting. And that was the basic training for judge advocates in the Army.
Okay.
And then I was assigned to the 4th Infantry Division at Fort Lewis, Washington, was my first assignment. And I was a JAG at that point, just doing the stuff judge advocates do, which is far more than court-martial and all that. I was a claims officer. I worked on contracts. I dealt with the local legal authorities. Found it very interesting.
What was some of the interesting things you did there, the things that stand out in your mind?
Well, I did a lot of defense counsel at courts martial. They started me out as a defense counsel.
So you were defending soldiers who were being court-martialed?
Yes, who were being court-martialed. That's right. And I did a fair amount of that. But I was also doing claims and lawsuits against the military. I was writing opinions for the U.S. attorney to use in the lawsuits.
These men that were getting court-martialed, did you have success getting them out of that, or?
No, not really. They were pretty well, they were guilty, most of them. And the idea was getting them as light a sentence as possible. I did have 2 or 3 acquittals in larceny cases, and I had one in a homicide case.
Wow.
That I did get.
He got acquitted?
I got them acquitted on those, yeah.
Okay, so what happened after Washington?
My wife and I decided we really had enjoyed the Army so far. And the fellow who was running the Judge Advocate General's personnel program, a job later on, but the way I had much later, he was a lieutenant colonel, and he'd come around to interview people, and those interested in staying on as a career and going in the regular Army, he would encourage them by promising them a good assignment on the first assignment. And he promised us that, we could go to Germany or Hawaii. We chose Hawaii, thinking that if I stayed in the Army, I would go to Germany anyway, which was true. I spent later on, and as a more senior JAG, I spent 6 years in Germany.
So you ended up in Hawaii?
Yeah, I ended up at Schofield Barracks in Hawaii, and that was my first JAG assignment.
How was that?
I loved it. By that time, I'd taken up golf, and so I played quite a lot of golf in Hawaii, but I enjoyed the work. And a lot of the work in Hawaii was, I still did some defense counsel work. I prosecuted also, and I dealt with the local authorities on soldiers who had gotten into trouble with the local authorities. And I did what we call military affairs, contracts, and all that sort of thing.
Were you the only lawyer there? Or were there multiple?
No.
There were multiple.
There were, I think our office had 6 lawyers there, and I was one of the junior ones.
And what year would this be? Late 50s at this point?
Oh, let's see. My mind doesn't work like it used to. I guess we went to Hawaii in, let's see. When did we leave Fort Lewis? Well, it was in the early or the late 50s, I guess. Oh, by the way, when I was in Hawaii, I was sent to Okinawa for 6 weeks to defend courts-martial cases because that was our early stages of Vietnam. And Vietnam didn't want us trying courts-martial in their country, so they sent all the courts-martial to
Japan or
to Okinawa. And so I defended, I guess in 6 weeks, maybe half a dozen cases.
Wow. Any of those stand out in your mind?
Not really. One was a combat refusal from Vietnam.
And that means he just didn't.
He refused to And that was a pretty serious offense in those days. And he got a pretty good heavy sentence. He knew he would, I know.
Was he just young?
Yeah, he was a young black soldier, as a matter of fact.
How many years? Is that what it is, prison?
Yeah. There's after they're convicted, they were sent to Fort Leavenworth I forget what he got.
So that was the beginning of the Vietnam War.
Yeah, we had mostly advisors there at that point.
Did you think at any point you would end up in Vietnam?
Well,
or did you think, I'm just going to finish out Hawaii and go to Germany?
Much of it. I knew if I stayed in and we got in more heavily engaged, I knew that I would probably go. And I did.
Yeah, tell me that story.
Well, my next assignment was to go to the Judge Advocate General School again for the advanced course. And after the advanced course, which lasted, I guess 8 months, I was retained on the faculty at the JAG school to teach military justice, which I did. And I greatly enjoyed that tour of duty. And, one night, after we'd been in Charlottesville for, I guess 2.5 years maybe, one night in August of 1969, I guess, the telephone rang, and I answered it, and said, "Is this Ron?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "This is General Hodgson." Well, I knew General Hodgson. He was the Judge Advocate General of the Army, Major General. And I had met him before. And interestingly enough, before World War II, he practiced law in Jackson, Wyoming. And he knew a number of people from Star Valley because they were working on a committee to get a road, to get the CCC to build a road up through Snake River Canyon, which they did eventually. But anyway, this was General Hodgson, and he said, "We need you in Vietnam, and we need you there within 2 weeks, because the commanding general of the 1st Cavalry Division was unhappy with his staff judge advocate, and he requested that person be relieved and that a replacement be sent." So anyway, I without any hesitation General Hodgson said, "Are you available?" And I said, "Well, yes, sir. If that's where I'm needed, that's where I'll go." But 2 weeks was a pretty short notice.
What'd your wife say?
Well, first of all, she was a wonderful Army wife, and she understood. And she was able to stay in Charlottesville. We were renting a house, and it didn't require any movement on her part. The kids were both in grade school at that time, 2 daughters. And so anyway, we decided, we had 2 cars, that I would drive the little Toyota Corolla back and leave it with my parents here in Utah. And so that's what I did. I got in the Corolla one morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, and in 4 days I drove to Laramie. I had a sister-in-law and a brother-in-law there. And I stayed with them for a day, 2 days, including, by the way, the famous BYU game where the BYU or where the Wyoming players refused to or put a black armband. Do you remember that?
No,
It was in protesting BYU's racial policy.
Oh.
Well, the Wyoming coach kicked him off the team. That was a famous.
Did you go to that game?
I went to that game.
Oh, my gosh.
And the first time in my life, I sat on the other side of the stadium and didn't have the sun in my eyes.
That was football.
That was football.
And this is just before you're going to Vietnam.
Yeah. Then I went and drove over. My parents by that time were living in Fillmore. My mother was from Fillmore, and my dad reluctantly decided to go to Fillmore. Anyway, I spent a day with them, left the car with them, went to, in the meantime, I'd been promoted to lieutenant colonel. I got word of that. I went to San Francisco, spent one night with my brother, and then the next day flew out to Vietnam.
Where did you land in Vietnam?
Saigon.
What was that like?
Well, we landed early in the morning, and you could see some flashes off in the distance, and I guess some incoming, I don't know. Anyway, I got there. I went up to Long Binh, which was the big headquarters.
Via helicopter or car or truck?
I went up in a bus, but the 1st Cavalry Division sent a helicopter down for me, and I went up there in a helicopter.
What was your impression of Vietnam when you got there?
Well, it was different. I was concerned mainly with getting the job and getting that operated, and meeting the people that they were going to work for me. I had an office of about 25 people that I supervised.
And what base were you on?
It was a place called Phuc Vinh, and it was the headquarters of the 1st Cavalry Division, and it was an old French Foreign Legion compound that we had built we built quite a few buildings, barracks and all that. So, but my office was there, and of course, that's where I lived.
And what were your living quarters like there?
Well, I was in an old room that the French Foreign Legion had. It was a stucco room, I guess about 12 by 12, with a bunk and sandbags piled up around it. And it was by their standards, it was okay.
Pretty nice. And you had a big staff there. You said you had 25.
Well, I had an office of about 25 people, officers and enlisted.
And did you hear why did they replace the other guy?
I knew why. My first night there, or my first time I went over to see General Roberts, who was the commanding general, the chief of staff, Joe Kingston, a great guy, he told me, he said, the boss just isn't very happy because my predecessor would go in with a bunch of cases and he'd brief him on them. And then at the end, he'd always say, now it's your decision, General, not mine. And if you don't agree with me, what a dumb thing to say. Anyway, so I I guess I'd been there, 2 or 3 weeks, and Colonel Kingston said, "Don't change a thing. The general is very pleased with you."
He just wanted you to take care of stuff. The other guy was throwing too much on.
Yeah, that was, heaven's sakes. I'd go in and I'd debrief him. I said, "Here's what the case is all about. Here's what the guy is charged with. Here's what his commanders recommend. And here's what I recommend. And I recommend you approve my recommendation." And no trouble at all.
Well, and what kind of cases were you seeing when you got there?
Well, we saw quite a few of combat refusals at that time. We were getting those. Assaults, larcenies. It was kind of a variety of things.
At any one time, how many cases were you dealing with?
Well, I'd say, on the average, I'd see him 2 or 3 times a week with 3 or 4 cases. I didn't have any very complicated cases, in my judgment. They were fairly easy. And they were just the typical cases: assaults, barracks larceny, and the occasional combat refusal case.
And what was life like on the base? Were you getting shelled, taking mortars ever there?
Oh, we'd get what we called incoming maybe a couple of times a week. Yeah.
Did you get used to that?
It is. It was what it was, and I guess it was over in just a little bit. It wasn't prolonged.
Did you have a bunker to go into, or did they just?
No, I just stayed in bed. If I was in the office, I'd, we had sandbags and all that. What was the point? It didn't last very long because the people firing the rocket launchers knew that they had about 10 or 12 seconds before our radar picked them up. So they'd fire about 5 or 6 as fast as they could, and then they'd get the hell out of there.
Mm-hmm.
So you knew it was over. And I had a couple of fairly close ones. I had one night it got fairly close, and I stayed in bed, but shrapnel was coming through my window. And it wasn't a window, it was a plywood, but it had been a window. And that was the night that General Roberts, who was maybe 40 or 50 yards away from me in his quarters, got nicked on the finger and fixed with a Band-Aid. Well, the division AG got the casualty report that General Roberts had been nicked on the finger with the shrapnel. He wasn't at our base. He was at division rear. He flew up in a helicopter to award General Roberts the Purple Heart, and all he got was a lashing to get the hell out of here. General Roberts had 2 Purple Hearts, one from Normandy when he jumped with the 101st Airborne, and one in the Battle of the Bulge when he was with the 101st. So I told the guys in the mess, and I said, well, I was gonna, if I'd have known it, I'd have stuck my finger up in the air, and maybe I'd have caught a piece of the shrapnel.
Did you travel outside the base much?
A lot. In fact, I was awarded the Air Medal for over 100 hours of air flight, because the commanders I was serving were the battalion commanders, the brigade commander, and I did a lot of going out to see them and all that.
So you'd go to different bases and and get on the ground and find out what was going on?
Yeah. Well, and to check and see if they needed anything and all that.
Wow. So what was some of those experiences?
Well, I don't recall any spectacular cases that we had. We had one case where there was a soldier went bananas. He was on drugs or something. And he pulled out his M16 and was holding it on 5 or 6 other soldiers. The first sergeant came in, saw what was going on, and immediately shot him without any hesitation, because this guy's finger was on the trigger. Well, the division artillery commander wanted to court-martial him for homicide on the theory that let's try by court-martial and let's have the court-martial convict him or acquit him. And I said, no way. We're not going to try somebody when we know without any doubt that he didn't commit any offense. Well, I didn't. And the general agreed with me that that's ridiculous.
At this point in '69, when you were there, what was going on in the war? I mean, what was your take on what was happening?
Well, there were no big battles while I was there. We get the incoming. Our soldiers were going out on patrol, hoping to catch the bad guys who were infiltrating, and you'd get small little scraps of battles there, but there were no big battles at all.
Was fragging a thing that you dealt with at all?
Not in our division. It was going on, and I don't recall a single fragging in our division.
Describe the 101st. What was their reputation?
1st Cavalry.
Oh, 1st Cav. I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
It was very high. It was the division that fought the two fairly big battles a few months before I got there, the Oshaw Valley and the I Trang Valley, I think, and just beat the hell out of the bad guys. Of course, they had artillery. We had artillery. We had air support. The bad guys didn't. And that's what kept things kind of tamped down.
So 1st Cav, that was a tight.
Yeah, it was a helicopter division. We had 212 Huey helicopters in our division.
Were they based at where you were at that base, or they were spread all over?
Most of them were on at the headquarters, and they would carry troops out for air assaults. And
was that every day you saw that going on?
Well, you'd have I can't remember a day you didn't have a lot of helicopters flying around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they kind of innovated that whole thing, didn't they?
Yes. That was why they that was the purpose of that division. And I'm not sure it worked very well, but
why do you say that?
Oh, I don't know. We'd airlift our troops out to there, and they'd go on patrol. I'm not highly critical of it.
Yeah.
We just weren't doing,
Was Hamburger Hill? Did that happen when you were there? That was in the Oshawa, I think, in that valley, I think. I wonder if that was that year.
That may have been up, but I think that was the 101st Airborne.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Any other soldier stories that were interesting?
Well, I did send one of my defense counsel on an air assault.
What does that mean?
Well, 2 soldiers came back after they'd had a little bit of a scrap with the Vietnam, really, the Vietnamese. And we had killed 2 North Vietnamese soldiers. 2 of our soldiers took their pocket knife out and cut the ears off, and they were bragging about it. Well, technically speaking, that's a war crime. So I signed one of my defense counsel to defend them, and he made a motion in the trial, which went to the commanding general at that point, since the case hadn't been referred, that there should be another air assault to make sure that these guys weren't just bragging or something like that. So we had with the chief of staff and the commanding general, I said, well, okay, we can send somebody out, but I insist the defense counsel go with them on the air assault. And that's what happened. Well, by the way, the counsel that did that later became a federal district judge. Anyway, I sent him out, and it was a great adventure of his life.
What happened?
Well, they went out. They couldn't find the bodies had been removed by that time.
Of the Viet Cong guys who had their ears removed?
The helicopter that my guy was on lost power about 12 feet above and just broke its skids. And he had the great adventure of his life.
What happened to the 2 soldiers? Anything?
No, we had to kind of we'd run out of witnesses, frankly.
How often were you getting those kind of cases similar to that?
That was the only one, really.
What about drugs? I'll be honest,
they were just starting then, I think. We didn't have a huge drug problem in our division.
Where you were, yeah.
Not that there were drugs, I'm sure of that.
Was that prosecuted hardly
yes.
at all? It was.
Yeah, drugs were prosecuted. And as I say, the one case of the soldier that went berserk, clearly he was on drugs.
Yeah. Was that talked about among the brass about the use of drugs with soldiers, or not really that much? I think we all knew it was a problem. Yeah.
And we did the best we could with it. And the soldiers were, I think, cautioned that for God's sakes, if you're going to use drugs, don't use them when you're out in active patrolling.
Yeah.
And I think that probably was obeyed more than not. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any helicopter run-ins when you were flying around, going to the bases when you were going to the outposts?
I didn't have any trouble. I got enough hours, I say, to earn an air medal. The one thing I remember, I was flying one day. Well, I'll tell you 2 incidents. I was flying one day, and it was in a Huey, and I heard the pilot and the co-pilot talking. I had earphones on too. I could hear that. And the pilot says, "Isn't there some artillery arcs going on here that we should know about?" And the guy said, "Gosh, I don't know." Because, if the helicopter knows they're in the arc of artillery, they're going to avoid it. So I got through that.
That was neither confirmed nor they didn't know.
Well, I'm still here.
Yeah.
And what was the other?
What was the other one? Another experience while you were flying, I suppose, in the helicopter?
Yeah, I was going up to one of our fire bases to see a battalion commander. And the pilot dropped me off at a fire base, and I got out of the helicopter, who was just about ready to take off again. I looked up, and it was a Vietnamese flag. He dropped me off at a Vietnamese fire base. So I waved at him and said, wrong place. And the only other thing I remember is once we were flying, it looked to me directly into a thunderstorm. You could see the lightning and all that, and I didn't say anything, and the pilot finally did a U-turn, and we got out of that.
And so you got along pretty good. Was that general there the whole time you were there?
I had General Roberts was my first commander, and my first chief of staff was Joe Kingston. And then Joe left, his tour came up, and Shy Meyer, who had been our brigade commander, 1st Brigade commander, came down to be the chief of staff. And he was the chief of staff the rest of the time I was there. Now, I mention him only because later on in life, he became the chief of staff of the Army. And I'm sure that had some influence on me getting promoted later because he was one of my rating officers.
Did you deal much legally with the locals at that point, or mostly your stuff was just dealing with soldiers? I mean, was there local disputes between the Army and...
No.
You didn't deal in that at all?
No.
I think on our phone conversation, we talked about the Mealy or whatever you dealt with that. You dealt with a big legal situation over there.
Well, that was later on.
Oh, okay. In life. Was that after?
Mealy had occurred a year before I was there.
Okay.
But when Mealy broke, I was back in Washington as the chief of what they called the Government Appellate Division in the office of the Judge Advocate General. And in the meantime, Lieutenant Calley had been court-martialed.
And gives people the background of that case, what happened there.
Well, it was in the Americal Division, and Lieutenant Calley's platoon on the basis that it was a battle, killed about 300 Vietnam civilians. And there was no indication that there was any
battle.
Viet Cong in Now, the division at that time, I understand, thought that the villagers were helping the Viet Cong. Well, after the court-martial, Calley received a 10-year dishonorable discharge and confinement. And he appealed to the Court of Military Review in Washington on that there were errors at the trial and his case should be reversed. At that time, I was the Government Appellate Division. I was on the opposite side. My office answered the brief of Lieutenant Calley.
At that point, if you're in the military, is your the attorney defending you always military as well? Or could you go outside and get a private attorney?
You can go outside and private attorney. In fact, Lieutenant Calley, I think, was defended down at Fort Benning, and I think he had civilian lawyers. He was defended at our court, or at the Court of Military Appeals, by a civilian lawyer, one of whom was from Salt Lake. I can't remember his name now, but he had been a judge on the U.S. Court of Military Appeals.
And what happened? What happened in the appeal?
We won. And then it went up to the U.S. Court of Military Appeals, which was a civilian court. And we also won that. Yeah.
Was he the only one prosecuted for that? Or were others involved?
I think there was one Captain Medina was prosecuted. He was the company commander, but he was acquitted.
And did that case lay low for a while before it came to light? Is that what happened?
Yes. That was picked up by the New York Times.
Oh, so it hadn't even gotten out until they had published about it.
When it came out, I was in Vietnam. When it was released, when the New York Times reported it, we got it because we would get, in addition to we would get the New York Times paper there. That
boy, I bet that caused some rumbling when that came out.
Yeah, it did. In fact, that I was charged. First of all, Department of the Army said you've got to give some instruction on the laws of war. And that was given to me by, I guess, General Roberts. And that was my mission. So I had to come up with a training program in Vietnam for the soldiers, which I did.
Yeah. You spent a year over there, right?
A year.
And how did that end when you left there?
Well, I could see it was winding down, obviously. And my year was up. My replacement was there, so I left. And I, other than the cases coming out of Vietnam, but I then worked as an appellate counsel. I had nothing to do with it. Yeah.
And when you flew out, where did you land in the States? Did you fly into California?
Oh, my gosh. Let's see. It was the longest flight of my whole life. We landed in Tokyo. We landed in Alaska. And we landed in San Francisco.
Were you relieved to get out, or was it?
Well, yeah, I guess so. I'd done my time, and I had a new assignment coming up. In the meantime, my wife, my dear wife, had, we were renting in Charlottesville. I gave her a power of attorney. She went down to Washington bought a house, moved us, and so I landed in Washington.
Wow.
And she already had the house.
Oh, wow, that's a lot of
up and going.
Wow. Did you get any of the anti-Vietnam flack when you came back?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, if you're in your uniform and you had to wear your uniform, you'd get people honking at you and shaking their fist and all of that sort of thing. Later on, they came out with a rule that if you worked in the Pentagon, and I was working out in Arlington at a building there called the Nassif Building, but I'd go down to the Pentagon 2 or 3 times a week. And they came out with a rule, if you don't want to wear your uniform, you can wear civilian clothes. And I called all my people together. I had a pretty big office at that time. I said, well, here's the rule. If you want to wear civilian clothes, you can. I will be wearing a uniform every day. Some of them did, some of them didn't. So that was all.
And what was your new assignment? What did you get after Vietnam?
I was the chief of what they call the Government Appellate Division. We were handling at the appellate level the appeals from courts-martial.
And how were you seeing a ton of those, I suppose?
It was a teaching job as much as anything else.
Teaching the younger attorneys?
Because I had a group of very smart younger attorneys, but they had very little experience. And I was the only one initially that had even been in Vietnam. Of course, we got cases from Europe and everywhere else. It was a teaching job as much as anything else.
I bet you had a little extra street cred for having been over in Vietnam.
Yeah, and I had 2 people that came back from Vietnam who had worked for me in Vietnam, and they were good to have around too.
So after that, you ended up where was your next assignment after you were there?
Let's see, what did I do? Oh, I became the chief of the personnel office of the Judge Advocate General. That I worked in the Pentagon for the personnel. I was the assignments officer for the JAG Corps. And I traveled with the Judge Advocate General when he'd make visits. And I had 2 visits to the Far East and a visit to Europe where we traveled all over the place. And had 2 or 3 visits in the United States as well.
Sounds like you enjoyed what you did.
What?
It sounds like you really enjoyed what you did.
Well, that was a good job. I learned a lot about the Army in that job.
How was working in the Pentagon? If my takeaway from the Pentagon, if you're ever there, at the rush hour time, it's crazy how many people go in and out.
Oh, well, yeah.
It's such a huge
additionally,
building.
you can't believe it. I mean, you got how many thousand of people working there. And, yeah.
Okay, so you ended up in Germany then?
No, my next assignment was to go to one of the Army war colleges. I went to the logistical college over at Fort McNair, and that was a senior service college. And that was sort of a prerequisite for ever being in line to become a general officer. Not that everybody that goes there becomes one.
Yeah.
And my next assignment was to go to Europe. And I became the judge advocate of 7th Corps in Stuttgart. And by this time, I was a colonel. I had become promoted to colonel.
And you enjoyed it over there?
Oh, yeah, loved it. It was a good assignment. Had a good commander. I worked for Lieutenant General Julius Beckton, who was, I think, the first black officer to become a lieutenant general. He was a wonderful guy to apply for.
And all told, how many years were you in the Army?
I was in 30 years. After Stuttgart, I was fought for. General Harvey had become the Judge Advocate General, and he wanted me to become his executive officer in the Pentagon. And General Beckton didn't want to let me go. So they fought over me.
Did you have a choice in that matter at all, or no?
I loved Stuttgart, but I knew this next job was a good job. And finally, General Harvey convinced General Beckton that this was my best chance to become a general officer. So he let me go, and I was the executive officer in the office of the Judge Advocate General for a year and a half or 2 years, and lo and behold, I became a brigadier general after that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what did you do at that point? What was that assignment?
I became the assistant Judge Advocate General for civil law. I had a whole bunch of offices under me. I had the contract law office, military affairs office. I had the patent law office, and that was it. I'll tell you a story there. The chief of the patent law office, they were all civilian, retired. And the other 4 officers came in one day. We were advertising for a chief, and they said, "We don't want a chief. The 4 of us will handle it together as chiefs." And I said, "You don't understand the Army. There has to be one person in charge. In case he screws up, I have somebody to latch on to." So I convinced them that we had to have a chief.
Can't have 4 chiefs.
And then after I left that job to become the European Judge Advocate in Heidelberg. Yeah.
Wow.
And then after I served 4 years in Heidelberg, entirely different job. I had very little or no military justice stuff. I was dealing with the other NATO countries and all that. That was a good job. I loved it. And then my final job after 4 years in Heidelberg, I became the chief judge of the Court of Military Review. And that was, I enjoyed that.
And what did that entail? What were you over doing that?
Well, my retirement date came up. In the meantime, Congress had created this U.S. Court of Veterans Appeals, and I knew that was being created, and the Judge Advocate General at that time said, you'd really be perfect for that job. Said the problem is you need somebody who has an in with the president. It's a presidential appointment. And I thought, oh, then I walking down the hall, and I said, hell sakes. The Senator Al Simpson from Wyoming was not only a friend, but he was on the Veterans Affairs Committee and was probably the closest friend President Bush had in Washington. So I gave him a call, and he helped me get that job.
And what did you do in that job?
Well, they consider that I'm still part of it, by the way. I'm a senior judge with no duties. They consider appeals veterans have from decisions by the Board of Veterans Appeals in the Veterans Affairs Office.
Is that for like benefits and stuff?
Benefits.
Yeah. In the course of what you were doing, were you involved in like what do they call it? Rules of engagement kind of talk ever? For the soldiers, what's deemed appropriate behavior in which instances?
Well, in the sense back in Europe, when we went through the laws of war and we instructed people on the laws of war, we went through briefly the rules of engagement and the things you can do and what you can't do.
Yeah. Obviously, you really had a good career and enjoyed your career.
Oh, loved it.
Let's first go to what's your takeaway now that you're older of your whole career? How was your time in the Army? What's your thoughts process on that?
Well, I started out with no idea of making the Army my career. And then once I got involved in it, I enjoyed the work. There's a variety of things to do, and I enjoyed every job I had, some more than others. I enjoyed every superior officer I had, some more than others, some much more than others. But I enjoyed it. I had a good career and a good life, and yeah.
Looking back on Vietnam, what's your takeaway from your time there?
We should never have gone into Vietnam. We weren't accomplishing anything, and it was just a matter of time. I could see that when we went there. We weren't getting anywhere. But
was that? Would you say among the people you dealt with that? Was that opinion you just held yourself? You got that feeling that lots of people...
we didn't talk about it a lot, but I think there was a lot of, what are we accomplishing? We're not getting anywhere. And we're losing people. I think that was a mistake. It started a long way back, actually, in the Kennedy administration is where the buildup started. It went through the Johnson administration, and through all the others. And as I say, it was a no-win situation as far as I could see.
Yeah. Anything else? Any other stories you want to tell?
Well, no, I had a good career. I started out to practice law in a little town in Wyoming and decided I would rather, I was enjoying what I was doing. I thought I enjoyed the people I worked for, and I enjoyed being helpful to them, to the commanders I worked for. So,
Wow, you lived an interesting life, my friend. That's pretty good.
well, I had fun.
Yeah, it seemed like you enjoyed the ride.
I really did. I had fun. It was a good life.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing. It's a real honor to meet you.
Well, thank you for interviewing me, and I hope whoever hears this, even if someone or sees it, even if I court-martialed you, I was only doing my duty.
Thank you, sir.